What if I told you the reason you feel awkward in conversations is not because you lack words, but because you lack control over your mind? What if confidence was never something you had to build, but something you simply stopped blocking inside yourself? And what if the most powerful communicators in the world are not the loudest, but the calmest? Every person you see who talks smoothly, confidently, and without fear is not different from you. They don't have special words. They don't have magic personality. They simply have one thing under control: their inner state. Stoicism teaches us a powerful truth: you cannot control how others respond, but you can always control how you show up. And the moment you master this, awkwardness starts disappearing from your life. When you are trapped in your own thoughts during a conversation, you are not actually present with the other person. You are monitoring yourself like a judge instead of engaging like a listener. This creates hesitation in your words, unnatural pauses, and overthinking every sentence before you speak it. Stoicism helps you break this cycle by shifting your awareness away from self-judgment and toward genuine curiosity. Instead of asking, "How am I sounding?" you start asking, "What is this person actually saying, and what do they mean?" This small shift removes pressure because the focus is no longer on performing, but on understanding. And when your mind is not busy trying to impress, your communication becomes smoother, more natural, and more confident without forcing it. The more you practice this outward focus, the more your social anxiety naturally weakens. You realize that most people are not analyzing you as deeply as you think; they are focused on themselves, just like you are. This understanding alone reduces a lot of mental pressure. Conversations stop feeling like tests and start feeling like exchanges of ideas, energy, and understanding. You begin to listen more carefully, respond more calmly, and speak more clearly because you are not rushing to prove anything. Ironically, when you stop trying to impress people, you often become more impressive because your words become relaxed, thoughtful, and real. Stoicism teaches that freedom in conversation does not come from perfect speech, but from releasing the need to control how you are perceived. Confidence in talking is not about using perfect sentences or always knowing exactly what to say. Real confidence comes from accepting imperfection in your speech and still choosing to express yourself anyway. Most people hold back in conversations because they fear sounding awkward, saying the wrong thing, or not being understood clearly. This fear creates tension in the mind, and that tension is what actually makes communication feel unnatural. A Stoic mindset removes this pressure by reminding you that perfection is not required for connection. What matters more is honesty, presence, and the willingness to speak even when everything is not perfectly formed. Even if your words are not perfect, your presence can still be strong and grounded. People feel your energy more than they analyze your grammar or sentence structure. When you stop treating mistakes as something dangerous, your entire approach to conversation changes. Instead of trying to control every word, you allow your thoughts to flow more naturally. You become more relaxed, more real, and more present in the moment. Stoicism teaches that mistakes are not failures in communication, they are a normal part of being human. And once you accept that truth, your speech becomes lighter, your mind becomes calmer, and your confidence starts to feel effortless instead of forced. Awkwardness grows from overthinking the future. When your mind is stuck in questions like, "What should I say next?" or "What if I say something wrong?" you are no longer in the conversation, you are inside your head, trying to predict every possible outcome. This creates pressure, and that pressure blocks natural flow. Instead of listening, you start planning. Instead of responding, you start calculating. Stoicism teaches you to break this cycle by pulling your attention back to the present moment, where real communication actually happens. You don't need 10 sentences prepared in advance, because real conversations are not scripts, they are living, changing moments. All you need is to be fully present with what the other person is saying right now. When you listen deeply without trying to immediately plan your response, your answers become more natural, more relevant, and more confident. Presence removes the need for perfection because you are no longer performing, you are participating. Stoicism reminds you that true communication strength is not in preparation, but in awareness. The more present you are, the less awkward you feel, because you are no longer fighting the moment, you are living inside it. One of the biggest secrets of confident people is their relationship with silence. They are not afraid of pauses, because they understand that silence is not a gap that needs to be filled, it is a space where thinking, presence, and control naturally exist. In contrast, when someone is insecure, even a single second of silence feels uncomfortable. They rush to fill it with unnecessary words, over-explaining themselves or speaking just to avoid the feeling of awkwardness. This creates pressure and weakens the natural flow of conversation. Stoicism teaches you to remove this fear by understanding that silence is not failure, it is simply a moment of calm awareness. When you become comfortable with silence, your entire presence changes. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself through constant talking or forced responses. Instead, you speak only when there is something meaningful to say, and you stay silent when there is nothing needed. This creates a sense of control and calmness that others can feel, even without words. People naturally respect someone who is not desperate to fill space, because it signals confidence and self-assurance. Stoicism reframes silence as strength, not weakness. When you are at peace with pauses, your communication becomes more powerful, your presence becomes more grounded, and your confidence starts to feel effortless rather than forced. Another reason people feel awkward in conversations is because they try to perform, instead of simply being present. They start acting like a version of themselves they believe is more confident, more funny, or more impressive. They carefully control their words, force reactions, and try to predict how the other person is judging them. But this creates inner pressure because the focus shifts away from the conversation and turns inward. Instead of listening and responding naturally, they are constantly monitoring themselves. Stoicism helps break this pattern by reminding you that communication is not a performance stage. You don't need to act confident, you need to stop resisting who you already are in the moment. The more you try to control how you appear, the more unnatural and awkward you feel. Real confidence starts when there is no mask to maintain. When you stop trying to impress, you stop dividing your attention between what I am saying and how I am being seen. That mental division is what creates hesitation and awkward pauses. But when you allow yourself to simply be present, your words become more natural and your energy becomes more grounded. You are no longer performing a role, you are just responding honestly to what is happening. Stoicism teaches that strength in conversation comes from removing the need to be someone else in order to be accepted. When you are comfortable being exactly who you are, without exaggeration or fear, your presence becomes calm, your speech becomes effortless, and your confidence becomes real instead of acted. You don't need to impress anyone. Think about this deeply, every person you talk to is also carrying their own fears, insecurities, doubts, and internal conversations that you cannot see. While you are worrying about how you are being perceived, they are also worrying about how they are being perceived. This simple realization reduces a lot of unnecessary pressure because it breaks the illusion that everyone else is fully confident and judging you from a place of perfection. In reality, everyone is human, everyone overthinks at times, and everyone is focused on their own inner world more than they are focused on analyzing you. Stoicism teaches this idea as the equality of minds. No one is inherently above you, and you are not above anyone else in a social sense. Each person is simply another human being navigating their own experiences, challenges, and emotions. When you truly understand this, the need to impress naturally starts to fade because you stop placing others on a higher mental pedestal. Conversations become more relaxed because you are no longer trying to earn approval, you are simply interacting as equals. This mindset removes fear, reduces self-consciousness, and replaces pressure with calm presence. When there is no sense of hierarchy in your mind, communication becomes more natural, confident, and grounded. Awkwardness also comes from expecting perfect reactions from others. When you go into a conversation hoping for a specific response, like laughter, agreement, attention, or approval, you quietly place pressure on the interaction. And when people don't respond the way you imagined, you start feeling uncomfortable, overthinking what went wrong, or trying harder to fix the moment. But Stoicism teaches a more grounded view. Human behavior is unpredictable. Some people will respond warmly, some will be quiet, some will be distracted, and some simply won't match your energy, and none of this is fully in your control. A Stoic does not depend on outcomes to feel stable. Instead of measuring success by how others react, you measure it by how clearly and honestly you expressed yourself. You speak with intention, not expectation. You focus on being present, respectful, and clear, without needing a specific reaction to validate you. This removes a huge amount of pressure because your peace is no longer tied to external responses. Real freedom in communication begins when you stop trying to control how others respond and start focusing on how truthfully and calmly you show up in the moment. Confidence grows when you train yourself to respond instead of reacting instantly. A reaction is emotional, fast, and often uncontrolled. It comes from surprise, ego, or insecurity. But a response is different. A response is slow enough to include awareness. It gives you space to understand what is actually happening before you decide what to do. When someone speaks in a strange tone, behaves unexpectedly, or creates an uncomfortable moment, most people panic internally and start overthinking. But Stoicism teaches a calmer approach. Observe first, don't jump to conclusions, and don't let emotion take control of your next move. Staying calm in these moments is where real confidence is built. You don't need to force a reaction or try to fix everything immediately. You simply stay present, notice the situation, and adjust your behavior naturally if needed. This creates emotional stability because your inner balance is no longer dependent on other people's actions. Stoicism is not about controlling others or making every situation go perfectly. It is about controlling your own emotional response so nothing outside of you can easily disturb your peace. When you master this, even uncomfortable interactions lose their power over you, because your mind stays steady no matter what happens around you. The more you accept yourself, the less awkward you become in social situations. Awkwardness often comes from resistance, resisting who you are, how you speak, or how you think you are being perceived. When you don't fully accept yourself, every conversation feels like a test. You are constantly monitoring your words, correcting yourself mentally, and worrying about whether you are good enough in that moment. This creates pressure, and that pressure is what makes communication feel forced and unnatural. But when self-acceptance grows, that internal conflict slowly disappears. Self-acceptance removes the need for approval because you are no longer trying to earn permission to be yourself. You stop entering conversations with the hidden goal of being liked or validated, and instead you simply show up as you are. When approval is no longer the goal, conversations become lighter, calmer, and more effortless. You listen more, you overthink less, and you respond more naturally instead of performing. You stop trying to impress and start being real. And interestingly, that is exactly the point where people begin to connect with you more, because authenticity always feels more comfortable than perfection. True conversational confidence is not learned in a single day, it is built slowly through repeated moments of choosing awareness over anxiety. Every time you feel that pressure rising in a conversation but still choose to stay present instead of overthinking, you are training your mind. Every time you feel the urge to panic but instead pause, listen, and respond calmly, you are strengthening control over your emotions. And every time you speak without letting the fear of judgment silence you, you are breaking the mental pattern that creates awkwardness in the first place. Confidence is not a sudden transformation, it is a quiet rewiring that happens through repetition. Over time, these small choices begin to reshape how your mind operates. The anxiety that once controlled your conversations slowly loses its power because you are no longer feeding it with reaction. Instead, you are replacing it with awareness, presence, and calm response. One day, without even noticing the exact moment it changed, you will realize that talking to anyone feels natural. Not because people changed, but because your relationship with your own thoughts changed. Stoicism teaches that real confidence is not about eliminating fear, it is about refusing to let fear guide your actions. If you completely remove the fear of judgment from your mind, how different would your voice, your words, and your life become? Confidence is not found in perfect words, but in a mind that no longer fears being imperfect. If you think I provided you valuable content, then please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment your thoughts in the comments section because your opinion truly matters here.